Las metas de esta clase son aprender las palabras para diferentes lugares en el pueblo o en la ciudad, aprender a describir lo que hay donde tú vives y también poder describir lo que no hay y dar tu opinión. Now the first bit of vocabulary, the first phrase that we're going to need to know is en mi ciudad hay, en mi ciudad I, and this means in my city there is or there are. So that word I, it doesn't change for singular or plural, so whatever you say after that, whether it's one thing or two things or many things, it just stays the same and it's pronounced I. Now if you live in a town rather than a city, or you live in a village, then you could say en mi pueblo hay, which means in my town there is. Now there is a word aldea, which means village, but quite often, especially in Spain, they just say pueblo or pueblito for smaller areas that we'd consider villages as well. So we can take pueblo as meaning town or village. And then the first thing that there might be is un castillo, which is a castle. Now the double L in Spanish, it sometimes pronounces a y, castillo, sometimes as a j, castillo. In Argentina they pronounce it as castillo, but it's never a l sound, it's never like the single L, so it's never going to be castillo, so careful with your pronunciation of that one. Now the next one is un mercado, which is a market, and if un mercado is a market, then un supermercado is a supermarket. Next we've got un estadio de fútbol, or if you just want to refer to a stadium in general, un estadio. A shopping centre or a mall is un centro comercial, kind of like a commercial centre. Un centro comercial. If you're learning Spanish to speak in Spain, most people in Spain, they pronounce C's like this, C-E and C-I, like a th. So it would be un centro comercial. So either way is perfectly correct. It just depends on what accent you'd like to emulate. Un centro comercial, un centro comercial. Now an airport is un aeropuerto. Un aeropuerto. And if we get rid of aero, un puerto means a port for ships and boats. So it might be that you've got an airport where you live, or a port, or you might have both. Now careful with the pronunciation of this one, because in English, like in the word air, where we've got two vowels next to each other, it tends to create just a different sound, but just one sound. In Spanish, most of the time, you still have to pronounce each one separately. So whereas we'd say A-E-R-O, like an aeroplane, we just say aeroplane, air. In Spanish, we do have to pronounce both of those vowels separately. Aero, aeropuerto, aeropuerto. Okay, the same happens with euro, the currency of Spain. It's euro, 10 euros, not 10 euros. Okay, so just something to look out for when you're seeing Spanish. It's lovely in phonetics, so it means you always know exactly how to pronounce a word once you know the rules. Now if there's a station where you live, for example a train station, you can say una estación de, and then in the case of a train station it would be una estación de tren, train. If it's a bus station, then it might be una estación de bus or de autobús. If it's a tram station, una estación de tranvía. So just like with un estadio de fútbol, un estadio de béisbol, feel free to change these things so that they better represent the place where you live. Now a sports centre is un polideportivo. Un polideportivo. You might also come across un centro de deportes, which is quite literally a centre of sports. So deportes means sports, deportivo means sports as an adjective, and poly, it's just like poly in English, we've got lots of words that use that. I think it might come from Greek. So poly just means several. So several sports, like we've got polyglots, people that speak several languages, polyamorous, people that love several people. We do have similar words. It might help you to remember that one. Una piscina pública is a public pool or a public swimming pool. And of course you could just say una piscina. But it's useful to know that public, pública, público is a nice near cognate, really similar word for you to add to your vocabulary as well. Now a university is una universidad, una universidad. Now there are a few things I'll say about this. First of all, the U sound. In English we say university, we say the U a bit like U. In Spanish it's more of a U sound. Now the same happens with music, we say music. In Spanish it's música. That's something that catches native English speakers out quite a lot in Spanish. The second thing I'll say is that the DAD ending in Spanish, it's quite a common pattern that you'll start to see, that TY, words that end in TY, often end in DAD in Spanish. For example, liberty, libertad, university, universidad, activity, actividad, masculinity, masculinidad. The other thing I was going to say about this is that when you've got DAD on the end of a word, it's not a hard D sound that it ends on. It's not universidad. It's more like a TH in English. Universidad, dad. Okay, especially if you want to sound more native, it's a good thing to practice saying those more like a TH on the end, very softly. The same happens, people who live in Madrid, they don't say vivo en Madrid, they say vivo en Madrid. Okay, so again, it's a bit like a TH. Now we've had a look at quite a lot of new vocabulary, and so far everything I've given you has been singular. A swimming pool, and so on. Now it's probably quite straightforward, and you probably know that you could change una piscina, a swimming pool, for dos piscinas, and just add an S and use a number. But if you want to say some, for example, instead of un museo, a museum, you might want to say unos museos. And this means some museums. And of course, if it was something like piscinas, which is feminine, it would be unas. So an example of how we could use this with another feminine noun is with some town squares, or some people do say plazas. Unas plazas, unas plazas. Or in Spain they'd say unas plazas. Another thing, instead of saying there are 2 museums or some museums, we might want to say there are lots of. So with parque, park, we could make it plural, parques, and we could say there are muchos parques. There are lots of parks. And again, muchos can become muchas. Now if we want to say there are lots of restaurants, we could say muchos restaurantes. Muchos restaurantes. Again, with this one, it's very similar to aeropuerto in that the AU, we pronounce those separately. Restaurantes. Whereas in English we kind of put all that together, or a lot of British English speakers just kind of get rid of it altogether. Restaurants, but restaurantes. So make sure you pronounce all of that word. Now it's probably the case for something in your town or city where there's not just one of them, but there's also not many. So you don't want to use un or una, but you also don't want to use muchos or muchas. And in that context you could use bastantes, which means quite a few. Por ejemplo, bastantes tiendas, quite a few shops. Just a quick reminder to hit that like button. It's just a click of a button or a tap of the screen for you, but it really means a lot to me. And if you haven't already done so, please do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the future videos that I'll be posting. If you really don't want to miss out on any of them, you can also turn on notifications. Now you might have seen bastante before, for example in estoy bastante cansado, I'm quite tired. Used with an adjective it means quite. Used with a noun it means quite a few. And the good thing is, because it ends in an E, it doesn't change. So whether you're using a noun which is masculine or feminine, plazas or parques, you can just keep bastantes exactly the same. Now let's quickly recap. If you live in a city, you could say en mi ciudad hay. In my city there is or there are. To make negatives in Spanish, it's super easy because all you do is you put no in front of the main verb. In this case the verb is hay. So to say in my city there is not or there is no, we simply need to say en mi ciudad no hay. So we've got en mi ciudad hay, en mi ciudad no hay. And we can do exactly the same with en mi pueblo hay. In my town or in my village there is or there are. En mi pueblo no hay. In my town or my village there isn't or there are no shops or there is no swimming pool, for example. Now at this stage in the video it's good to have an opportunity to have a look at this vocabulary all together and make sure that it's starting to go in and we're starting to get to grips with it. So if you want to just go through the Spanish and make sure you can match it up with the correct piece of English vocabulary on the right hand side, then now's a great moment to pause the video and do so. Here you have the answers, so it might be that there are a couple that caught you out, some of the ones that are a bit more difficult to remember. For the most part actually the words are pretty similar to the English. These words are quite friendly words, to be honest, so hopefully you've done pretty well on that activity. Another opportunity for practice, what I'm going to do is show you how I would use this vocabulary to put together a sentence, a couple of sentences and a paragraph. En mi ciudad hay unos museos, un mercado, una universidad y muchos restaurantes. Okay, so just pause the video and see if you can work out what that means in English. So we've got, in my city there are some museums, a market, a university, and many or lots of restaurants. So I've used a connective y and, the kind of most important and the simplest connective you can use and you can learn in another language, the word for and. Now to extend on this even more, I'm going to use another connective. También hay una estación de tren y un castillo. So again, pause the video and work out what that sentence means. So here we've got, also, there is a train station and a castle. Now looking at how I can kind of contrast and say something, give some more information, but I've already talked about what there is. Now I'm going to talk about what there is not. Sin embargo, no hay ni piscina, ni aeropuerto. Now, this is a bit trickier. See if you can work out from the context what you think this means if you're unfamiliar with sin embargo and ni. So, sin embargo, it's super useful. It means however. So I've said what there is. However is kind of the turning point in my paragraph where I'm then going to kind of contrast what I've already said. No hay. So again, just putting no in front of the verb. Nice and easy to say there is no or there isn't any. Ni. It's kind of simpler in Spanish. In English we'd have to say neither nor. So there's neither a swimming pool nor an airport. However, there's neither or neither a swimming pool nor an airport. Tampoco hay estadio de fútbol, nor is there a football stadium. So if I'm saying there's neither this nor that, I need to use ni, first thing, ni, second thing. However, if I'm saying nor is there and just one thing, I can say tampoco. Tampoco is basically the opposite of también. En mi opinión, mi ciudad es un poco aburrida. In my opinion, my city is a bit boring. So this should give you a really good model from which to work. And you could write now a piece about where you live, whether it's a city or a town. You can just change ciudad for pueblo. So we've seen lots of different vocabulary. We've had a chance to kind of make sure that vocabulary started to go in. I've modelled how to do a piece of writing. So now it's your turn to do a piece of writing about where you live, your town or your city, the things that there are, if someone were to come and visit you, the things that maybe they wouldn't find there. And I'm going to put my model kind of response up on the screen for you, as well as some useful vocabulary, so you can just leave this video paused as you're writing and use all of that to support you. Make it your own, but hopefully everything's there that you need to write a really strong and really interesting paragraph about where you live.